Still pregnant, as can be seen. I plan on mowing my lawn today, cleaning the house again. I've cleaned the house and shaved my legs probably 4 times in preparation for this baby so far, so don't get your hopes up. I'm feeling really good. I have been having some practice contractions, so that's amazing. A few weeks ago, I was a little bit nervous to dive into birth again, so I'm grateful that this baby is so late because now I'm not nervous anymore. I'm just gonna be really, really excited when my water breaks.
Okay, so I need to talk about Encompass farming because somehow I have found myself in the deepest, weirdest corner of TikTok once again. And this time we are talking about pregnancy, free birth, religion, medical care, and a woman who apparently has decided that due dates are completely optional, which is certainly one way to approach childbirth. If you don't know who Encompass Farming is, congratulations, you still have a chance to turn around. But basically, Encompass Farming is a Nebraska-based farming and lifestyle account run by Abby and Gio Kopesh. They post about farming, natural living, relationships, food, pregnancy, and generally living outside of what they view as the conventional system. And Abby has become particularly controversial because of her approach to pregnancy and childbirth. She had her first daughter, Octavia, in 2023, through what she describes as a free or sovereign birth, essentially giving birth at home without medical professionals present. And now she is doing it once again, except this time the entire internet is watching, and I mean watching. People on Reddit are literally making posts analyzing her TikToks like they're trying to solve the Zodiac killer case. But underneath all of the jokes, there is actually a serious conversation happening here, because there's a huge difference between saying, I want a natural birth, and saying, I don't want prenatal medical care, I don't want an ultrasound, I don't want a doctor or midwife present, and I'm going to give birth completely unassisted. Those are not the same thing. And that is exactly where this whole controversy gets very, very interesting. So, why exactly is Abby doing this? Well, the first thing I want to make clear is that Abby has not exactly hidden her reason. According to an interview published earlier this year, Abby said she became increasingly dissatisfied with conventional Western medicine after feeling that it wasn't helping with various health issues that she was experiencing. Eventually, she decided she didn't want to see doctors anymore. And then she applied that philosophy to pregnancy. Before she even conceived her first daughter, she says she researched free birth and sovereign birth, including listening to the Free Birth Society podcast. So this was not just some random decision that she had made halfway through labor. This was more so a worldview that she was beginning to adopt. Abby's philosophy is basically built around the idea that the human body already knows how to give birth. She has talked about trusting her body, rejecting fear, and believing that pregnancy and birth shouldn't automatically be treated as medical emergencies. And I think that it's actually very important to acknowledge the reasonable parts of her argument, because there are legitimate criticisms of the medical system. Women can and have had traumatic birth experiences. People can feel pressured into interventions. A lot of women feel like doctors don't even listen to them, and wanting more autonomy over your own body is not some crazy extremist position. You can absolutely believe women deserve more control over childbirth. You can want a medication free birth. You can want to labor at home. You can hire a midwife, refuse an epidural, have a birth plan. None of that is inherently controversial. The controversy, however, starts when the philosophy becomes I don't need the medical system at all. The 2026 interview about her current pregnancy says Abby decided not to have conventional prenatal appointments or ultrasounds during her first pregnancy. And that's a very significant distinction, because if you're having a home birth with a qualified midwife and you're still receiving prenatal care, that's one conversation. But if you're intentionally going through a pregnancy without medical monitoring and then giving birth without a medical professional present, that's also an entirely different conversation. And that's exactly what makes Abby's situation so controversial. Let's rewind back to Abby's first birth. So, Abby gave birth to her daughter Octavia at home in August of 2023. According to her account, she went into labor, spent time preparing at home, eventually got into the bathtub, and later moved to the toilet because she found that position to be much more comfortable. And then she literally caught her own baby as it was coming out of her, which sounds like something out of National Geographic documentary narrated by Morgan Freeman. But there was also a very important detail to take note of. The baby's umbilical cord was reportedly wrapped around her neck. Abby says she was able to remove it and that the baby was born healthy, and obviously, let's say you're Abby, that experience might feel like confirmation. In fact, for Abby, it probably does feel like confirmation. She trusted herself. She didn't have a doctor, she didn't have a hospital, she handled the situation herself. Her baby was okay. Her baby was born healthy. So why would she believe that she needs to do anything different next time? And this is where I think the biggest philosophical problem comes in here, because a successful outcome does not necessarily prove that the decision itself was safe. It just proves that this particular birth had a successful outcome. Once again, those are two very different things. If I drive without a seatbelt and get home safely, that does not prove that seatbelts are unnecessary. It really means I just got lucky. And childbirth is obviously a lot more complicated than that analogy, but you get the point. You get what I'm trying to say here. And now she's doing it once again. So Abby is currently pregnant with her second child, and she's once again planning an unassisted birth. At this time, she's been documenting basically everything here. Her pregnancy has become content itself. Her beliefs have become content. Her birth philosophy has become content. And now, apparently, her refusal to believe in due dates has also become content. Because on August 14th, which is actually today as I'm recording it, Abby's Encompass farming account was still posting about the pregnancy at what she described as 41 weeks and 2 days. In the video, she says she doesn't really believe in due dates and believes that a baby will cook for as long as it needs to. She also says that she's not worried about the baby getting too large, isn't worried about amniotic fluid, and believes her body will not produce a baby that she cannot birth. That video reportedly received millions of views and thousands of comments. And that is where I think the internet reaction has become completely understandable. Now, I do want to make note that pregnancy does not care about your philosophy. You can believe in natural birth, you can believe in your body's ability to give birth, you can eat organic foods and live on a farm and sleep on a pile of hay like you're auditioning for a Little House on the Prairie reboot. Your body can still experience complications, and sometimes those complications are not obvious. And that's the entire purpose of prenatal monitoring. Not because doctors think that you can't handle your body or because your body is stupid, but because you cannot necessarily feel or predict everything that's happening inside of your body. And this is where I think a lot of the Reddit criticism actually has a point. There was actually a recent discussion that I saw in the Encompass farming subreddit where a woman described having home births with midwives while still receiving prenatal care. During a later pregnancy, an anatomy scan detected a major lung tumor in her baby that required treatment after birth. Her point was not home birth is evil, she actually supported home birth. Her point, though, was prenatal care can identify things you don't know are there. And that is a much stronger argument than simply calling Abby crazy or insane for doing what she's doing. Because, like I said, you can't predict your way into discovering every possible complication. Sometimes you need an ultrasound, sometimes you need blood work, sometimes you need a Doppler, or even a doctor. That's just simply you wanting to be informed about what is going on inside your body. There is nothing bad about that. I also want to talk about Abby's faith because I think that that plays a very large role in why she's deciding to make the content she does or participate in free birthing at all. So, a lot of Abby's worldview appears to be tied to faith and the idea of trusting God's plan. Some Reddit users have claimed that when they've asked her about potential complications or bad outcomes, she has essentially responded that she will accept whatever God has planned. And I want to be careful here because some of the specific comments circulating on Reddit are secondhand and I haven't exactly verified every alleged interaction. But the broader religious framing is clearly part of the conversation around her. And this creates, I would say, a very complicated question as well as a complicated scenario because faith can absolutely be a source of comfort during pregnancy. There is nothing wrong with believing that God is with you during childbirth. But once again, there is a difference between I trust God while also taking the necessary and reasonable precautions, and I trust God, therefore I don't need precautions, therefore I don't need prenatal care. Now, one of the strangest, most recent developments is at the end of July, Abby posted a video reading a statement in which she essentially acknowledged that she was assuming responsibility for her planned home birth. That prompted a Reddit discussion asking why exactly does she need to make this statement? Well, people came up with several possible explanations involving Nebraska law and potential liability, but I do want to stress that those explanations are Reddit speculations and not something that I've confirmed myself. What is confirmed, however, is that Abby publicly made the disclaimer, and I think that that matters a lot in this specific context because it shows that even she understands that this isn't just I prefer candles and a bathtub, but she's actively making a deliberate decision to give birth without professional assistance. And she's publicly acknowledging responsibility for that choice. Now, I do want to talk about where the internet has definitely gotten very weird within the last few days because people are no longer just criticizing her birth anymore or her anymore, but they're actively waiting for her birth. There is literally a Reddit thread called Who Else is Waiting Anxiously for This Birth? And people are discussing whether they think the birth will go smoothly, whether she secretly had an ultrasound, and whether certain parts of her content might be exaggerated for rage bait. One commenter even joked that they're watching because they want to see what happens. And that's a little disturbing because at some point, we are no longer talking about a woman making a controversial medical decision, but now we're talking about thousands of strangers sitting around waiting for a potentially life changing medical event to happen so they can see whether she was right. That's not exactly the healthiest scenario. And then, of course, there's the TikTok algorithm, because let's be real, Encompass Farming has discovered something that every successful influencer eventually learns: controversy gets views. A lot of them, too. Look at the ingredients here: free birth, religion, raw milk, raw liver, anti establishment beliefs, alternative medicine, traditional gender roles, a farm, pregnancy, a husband and wife with a history of bizarre internet drama. You could put this entire account into a blender, and the TikTok algorithm would probably produce a million views. And it certainly has. Abby's recent pregnancy content has gone insanely viral precisely because people can't look away. And I think a very reasonable question to ask is, does she genuinely believe everything she's saying? Well, I think that she probably does, but that also doesn't mean that she doesn't understand that controversy makes excellent content. Those two things can coexist. You can genuinely believe in something and understand that posting it online will make people furious. In fact, that's essentially what the influencer economy is. I do want to say, though, that I don't think the argument should be home birth bad, because that's lazy, and I don't necessarily agree with that argument either. There are women who have beautiful home births with midwives. There are women who have traumatic hospital births. There are women who have completely natural births in hospitals. There are women who need emergency C-sections. There are women who change their minds halfway through labor. Birth is not one size fits all. The issue with Abby's situation is much more specific here. She is not simply choosing a different birth environment, but she's actively choosing to reject a large portion of conventional prenatal and obstetric care, and she's publicly presenting that decision as part of a philosophy of trusting the body and rejecting fear. That's what deserves scrutiny. Now, I actually love the concept of trusting your body. I think women should be taught to understand their bodies. I think women should be listened to. I think doctors should explain procedures instead of treating patients like they're stupid. I think informed consent matters. I think birth plans matter. I think people deserve autonomy over their care. But trusting your body doesn't have to mean distrusting the medical field or distrusting science. Those ideas can coexist. You can say, I trust my body, and also, I'm going to get an ultrasound. You can say, I want a natural birth, and also, if something goes wrong, I want emergency medical care. You can say, I don't want an epidural, and still have a doctor in the building administer it to you just in case. None of those things have to contradict each other. And that's ultimately where I land on Encompass Farming. I don't think the problem is that Abby wants a natural birth, or even that she dislikes hospitals. I think the problem here is the combination. no conventional prenatal care, no professional at the birth, a strong ideological rejection of mainstream medicine, a belief that the body will naturally know what to do, a belief that fear shouldn't dictate decisions, and then broadcasting all of this to an enormous audience that may include pregnant women who don't necessarily understand the difference between a personal story and medical evidence. That's where my concern comes from, because Abby's first birth works out, and I genuinely hope this one does too. Nobody should be rooting for a mother or baby to have a bad outcome just so they can win an argument on Reddit. But the fact that something worked once doesn't make it universally safe, and the fact that someone believes something deeply doesn't make it medically true either. Believe it or not, Encompass Farming actually started out as a farm account. Then it became a lifestyle account, then a relationship drama, then a wellness brand, and now Abby's pregnancy has basically become a live philosophical experiment. Millions of people are watching a woman say, "I trust my body," and thousands of other people are screaming, "Please trust an ultrasound too." And somehow, both sides have turned childbirth into a Twitter debate, which is probably the most 2026 sentence I could possibly say. At the end of the day, I don't think anyone watching TikTok can know exactly what is happening inside Abby's pregnancy. We don't know what private medical information she may or may not have. We don't know whether she's received care that she simply has not shared publicly. We don't know exactly what happens behind the camera. And Reddit definitely does not know either. So I don't want to pretend that I have some magical window into her pregnancy, because I certainly do not. But we can criticize the ideas that she chooses to publicly promote. Your personal birth plan is your personal birth plan. But once you turn that birth plan into content, start telling millions of people about it, and frame your experience as evidence that the conventional system is unnecessary, well, now we're allowed to ask questions, because the conversation is no longer what do you want to do with your own body, but it's also what are you telling everyone else to believe about theirs. And that is where the Encompass farming controversy gets a lot more complicated than weird farm TikTok lady doesn't like doctors. The real question is whether personal conviction has started being presented as medical truth, especially when the entire internet is currently sitting around waiting to see how this birth turns out. If you guys like this video, make sure to subscribe for more content, hit the like button down below, and as well as comment your views and your thoughts or your opinions. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye everyone!